When we talk about change, many people think it requires years of effort, endless willpower, and a constant battle with the self. But what if I told you that in just 21 days, you can begin to rewire the very structure of your brain? What if change wasn't about fighting against your old self, but about creating a new one from the inside out? Science shows us something extraordinary. The brain is not fixed. It is not static. It is neuroplastic, meaning it can reorganize itself. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every action you repeat, these are not just fleeting experiences, they are building physical connections in your brain. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And if you keep firing the same old patterns, doubt, fear, procrastination, you reinforce the same old circuits. But when you consciously choose new thoughts, elevated emotions, and intentional actions, you install a new program into your nervous system. This is the essence of the quantum habit formula. Small, conscious choices practiced consistently over 21 days create a quantum leap in your identity. Think of it this way: your current habits are nothing more than memorized programs. They are subconscious codes that run automatically. You don't wake up and decide to worry. You've practiced it so much that your body knows it better than your mind. You don't consciously decide to procrastinate. You've conditioned your brain to expect it. But here's the beautiful part. If you can train your brain into limitation, you can train it into liberation. For 21 days, I want you to imagine installing a new operating system. Day 1 is awareness. You begin by catching the old thoughts as they arise. I'm not enough. I can't do this. I'll start tomorrow. The moment you recognize those voices, you weaken the circuit. Day 2, you replace it with a higher thought. I am capable. I choose today. I am enough. By repeating this process, you are literally pruning away old synapses and growing new ones. But thought alone is not enough. Emotion is the glue that seals the memory. When you feel gratitude for the new future you're stepping into, when you feel the joy of already being that person, your brain doesn't know the difference between the inner experience and the outer reality. It begins to believe, chemically and neurologically, that this future is already true. That's when the body aligns with the mind. Now, combine this with action. A habit isn't just what you think or feel, it's what you do. The quantum habit formula says thought plus elevated emotion plus action repeated consistently equals transformation. For 21 days, if you visualize your future, feel it in your heart, and take even one small step in alignment with that vision, you are no longer the same person who began. You've already rewired your brain. And here's the quantum part. Change doesn't happen gradually, it happens suddenly. You might practice for 10 days and feel like nothing is happening. Then on day 11, something clicks. You feel different. You see opportunities where before there were none. You notice synchronicities. You feel a surge of energy you haven't felt in years. That's because your brain has crossed the threshold into a new pattern, a new identity. So imagine yourself 21 days from now. Imagine the confidence in your voice, the calm in your body, the clarity in your mind. Imagine the future version of yourself who no longer struggles with the old patterns. That person is not far away. That person is already inside you, waiting to be awakened by the thoughts you choose, the emotions you cultivate, and the actions you take today. You are not hardwired to be who you are. You are programmed by your past, but you are designed to create your future. And the next 21 days can be the beginning of a quantum shift in your life. So the question is simple: will you repeat the past, or will you rewire your brain and step into the future that's been waiting for you all along? Every single thought you think is not just invisible energy floating through your mind. It is a measurable event in your brain. Thoughts are electric signals, and when you think the same thought repeatedly, the same groups of neurons in your brain light up. The scientific principle here is simple yet life-changing: neurons that fire together, wire together. That means the more you repeat a thought, the stronger the connection becomes, and the more automatic it feels. This is why habits, whether empowering or destructive, becomes second nature. If you've been rehearsing worry for years, you've created thick, powerful neural highways of fear. If you've been practicing procrastination, your brain has wired in the comfort of delay as if it were survival. But here's the extraordinary truth. The same brain that wired itself into limitation has the capacity to rewire itself into freedom, confidence, and success. Imagine your brain like a garden. Each thought is a seed. When you keep watering the same negative thoughts, they grow into strong, tangled weeds that dominate your inner landscape. But if you consciously plant seeds of new thoughts, I am capable, I choose growth, I am enough, and water them daily, eventually, those weeds begin to wither while the new plants take root. Over time, the new garden becomes your reality. Here's what happens on a neurological level. When two neurons fire at the same time, they release chemicals that cause them to form a stronger bond. Do this once and the bond is weak. Do this 100 times and it becomes a superhighway in the brain. This is why it's not enough to think a positive thought once or twice. Transformation requires repetition with intensity. But there's more. The brain doesn't just wire based on thoughts, it wires based on emotional intensity. That means if you think a thought and feel it deeply, the brain hardwires it much faster. Think of the times you experienced a strong emotional event, a heartbreak, a success, a failure. You remember it vividly because the emotional charge burned it into your neural circuits. Now imagine harnessing that same principle consciously. If for 21 days you pair your new empowering thoughts with elevated emotions like gratitude, joy, or inspiration, you accelerate the rewiring process. This is not theory, it's neuroplasticity in action. Neuroplasticity means your brain is flexible, adaptable, and moldable. Every day, you are either strengthening old circuits or creating new ones. The choice is yours. Most people live unconsciously, running the same old circuits from yesterday, which creates the same today and the same tomorrow. But the moment you choose to interrupt those patterns, to fire a new set of neurons with conscious thought, you begin to wire a new future. The beauty of this principle is its simplicity. You don't need years of struggle to change. You don't need to fight the old patterns endlessly. All you need to do is stop firing the same old thoughts and begin firing new ones, over and over again until they become automatic. Just as a pianist masters a song through practice, you master a new self through consistent rehearsal. Think about it. If neurons that fire together wire together, then your brain is like wet clay. Every thought, every emotion, every repeated habit is shaping it. The more conscious you become of this, the more power you have to sculpt yourself into the person you want to be. This is why a 21-day cycle is so effective. It's long enough to weaken old circuits and strengthen new ones, but short enough to keep your focus sharp and committed. So the question is, what circuits are you wiring right now? Are you rehearsing doubt, fear, and limitation? Or are you rehearsing courage, confidence, and abundance? Because what you fire, you wire, and what you wire, you eventually live. Most people believe that identity is fixed, that who they are today is who they will be tomorrow. They say things like, "That's just the way I am," or "I've always been this way." But that is not the truth of human potential. Your identity is not a permanent label. It is a set of habits, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that you have rehearsed for so long they became automatic. And the most empowering discovery of modern neuroscience is this: you can reprogram that identity in as little as 21 days. Why 21 days? Because the brain and body need repetition over time to recognize, accept, and embody a new pattern. It takes about 3 weeks for old neural circuits to weaken and for new ones to strengthen enough to become natural. Think of it like downloading a new program into your subconscious operating system. At first, the old program is still running in the background, pulling you back into old patterns. But with consistent daily practice, thoughts, emotions, and actions aligned, you overwrite the old code and install the new one. Let's break it down. Day one is the spark, the moment you decide you're no longer willing to live as the old self. You catch yourself falling into familiar thought loops. I'm not good enough. I can't change. This is too hard. But instead of following them unconsciously, you pause. That pause is powerful. It interrupts the old program and creates space for the new. By the end of the first week, you may notice resistance. Your body, which has memorized the old self, will try to pull you back. It craves the familiar emotions of stress, worry, or comfort. But if you can stay conscious during this stage, if you remind yourself that this discomfort is simply your old identity losing its grip, you move into the second week with momentum. The second week is where the rewiring deepens. New thoughts like, I am capable, I am disciplined, I am worthy, start to feel less like wishful thinking and more like possibility. You visualize your new self daily, not as a distant dream, but as a reality you are already living. When you combine those thoughts with elevated emotions, gratitude, excitement, empowerment, you are no longer just imagining change, you are embodying it. Your brain and body begin to believe it. By the third week, something profound happens. The new identity begins to feel natural, and the old one feels distant, almost foreign. What was once effort? Thinking differently, choosing differently, feeling differently becomes more automatic. You wake up in the morning, and your mind is already primed toward the future rather than pulled back into the past. The habits you once had to force become part of who you are. This is the magic of the 21-day transformation cycle. It moves you from consciously trying to change to unconsciously living as the new self. And that is true identity shift. Identity is not what you say you are. It is what your brain and body automatically believe you are. Once your subconscious accepts a new pattern, it stops being something you do and starts being who you are. Think of the person who once struggled with procrastination, but now automatically takes action. Or the one who lived in self-doubt, but now naturally exudes confidence. The external results, more success, healthier relationships, better energy, are only the byproducts of a deeper transformation. They became someone new. So if you dedicate 21 days to conscious repetition, choosing your thoughts, elevating your emotions, and aligning your actions, you don't just change a habit, you change an identity. And once you become that new identity, you don't need to fight for change anymore. It flows effortlessly because it's who you are. Your future self is not far away. In just 21 days, with intention and consistency, you can step into it. And when you do, you'll look back at the old version of yourself and realize that was never who you truly were. If thoughts are the language of the brain, then emotions are the language of the body. Together, they create the blueprint of your reality. You can think a thought over and over again, but if it is not infused with emotion, it rarely sticks. Emotion is the glue of transformation. It is what bonds a new idea to your nervous system and makes it real. Think about this. The moments you remember most vividly in your life are not just ordinary events. They are the ones charged with emotion. A heartbreak, a victory, a loss, a breakthrough. Why do you recall them so clearly? Because emotion burned those experiences into your neural circuits. The same principle applies when you are trying to rewire your brain. If you want new thoughts and new habits to stick, you must charge them with elevated emotions. Let's use gratitude as an example. Gratitude is not just a polite feeling. It is a powerful frequency that signals to your brain and body that something good has already happened. When you pair a new thought like, I am successful or I am healthy, with deep gratitude, your brain doesn't just hear words. It experiences them as reality. Your nervous system begins to align with that future as if it has already unfolded. This is why simply repeating affirmations without emotion rarely works. If you say, I am confident, but feel doubt, your body rejects the message. Your brain receives a mixed signal, thought in one direction, emotion in another. But when your thought and your emotion are aligned, your body has no choice but to accept the new program. Emotion is also energy in motion. It moves through your body and carries information to every cell. When you feel joy, your body produces chemicals that strengthen your immune system and elevate your energy. When you feel fear or worry, your body produces chemicals that weaken you and pull you back into survival. This means every emotion you cultivate is literally shaping your biology. You are not just thinking your future into being, you are feeling it into being. Now, here's where the power of transformation lies. Most people live by the emotions of the past. They wake up and immediately think about their problems, which trigger feelings of stress, worry, or resentment. Those emotions then reinforce the same old thoughts, which produce the same behaviors, and the cycle continues. They are stuck in an emotional loop that wires their past into their present. But the moment you choose to feel elevated emotions, gratitude, joy, love, inspiration, you break the loop. You tell your body a new story. This is who I am now. This is my future. And because the body is the subconscious mind, it begins to believe it. That's when the magic happens. If you commit to 21 days of pairing new thoughts with elevated emotions, you accelerate the rewiring process. A thought alone is like a spark. It has potential, but it fades quickly. An emotion is like gasoline poured onto that spark. It creates a fire strong enough to light up the circuits of your brain and body. That fire is what forges transformation. So when you visualize your future self, don't just think about it. Feel it. Feel the excitement of success, the peace of freedom, the joy of living in alignment. Don't wait for those emotions to come after the future arrives. Generate them now, and your body will begin to live as if the future is already here. That alignment between thought and feeling is what makes change inevitable. Emotion is not just a side effect of transformation. It is the glue that bonds a new self into being. Without it, change is temporary. With it, change is permanent. So the next time you commit to a new habit or a new identity, remember, don't just think it, feel it. Because when thought and emotion unite, your future becomes your present reality. Most people live as prisoners of their past, not creators of their future. From the moment they wake up, they remember who they were yesterday. They wake up in the same bed, see the same surroundings, think the same thoughts, and feel the same emotions. And without realizing it, they are downloading their past into the present. That past then becomes the predictable future. It's a cycle, familiar, repetitive, automatic. This happens because your brain is a record of the past. Every experience you've had leaves an imprint in the form of neural connections. The more you revisit those experiences through thought and emotion, the stronger those connections become. Over time, you don't just remember the past, you become it. You embody it in the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. That is what it means to live a programmed life. You think you're making conscious choices, but in reality, 95% of your daily actions are governed by the subconscious programs you've rehearsed for years. If you've been practicing stress, you don't need to choose stress. It runs automatically. If you've been practicing doubt, you don't need to think about it. It arises effortlessly. You are programmed by your past. But here's the truth: you are not your past. You are the consciousness that can observe it, interrupt it, and redesign it. And that is where your power lies. When you become aware of the old program, you can begin to break free from it and consciously create a new future. How do you do this? You stop living from memory and start living from vision. Instead of waking up and immediately recalling yesterday's problems, you wake up and imagine tomorrow's possibilities. Instead of rehearsing the emotions of the past, anger, fear, frustration, you rehearse the emotions of your future, gratitude, joy, peace, confidence. By doing this daily, you signal to your brain and body, I am no longer defined by who I was. I am defined by who I am becoming. This shift is powerful because your body does not know the difference between a deeply felt memory and a deeply felt imagination. Both create the same chemical responses, the same neural pathways, the same emotional signatures. That means when you consistently feel the emotions of your designed future, Your brain begins to wire itself to match that reality, and your body begins to believe it is already happening. And once your biology changes, your behavior follows. The person who feels empowered begins to take action. The person who feels abundant begins to see opportunities. The person who feels confident begins to show up differently in the world. Step by step, thought by thought, feel like feeling, action by action. You shift from a programmed past to a designed future. Now, this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It requires conscious repetition. For 21 days, if you practice becoming your future self instead of rehearsing your past self, you will notice a profound shift. The old programs weaken because you stop giving them energy. The new programs strengthen because you keep firing those circuits with thought and emotion. And soon, what was once a conscious effort becomes an unconscious identity. The past no longer has a grip on you. The future begins to pull you forward. You stop living on autopilot and start living on purpose. That is the difference between being a prisoner of memory and being a creator of destiny. So ask yourself, are you rehearsing the past or are you rehearsing the future? Are you repeating the same programs or are you writing new ones? Because the moment you choose to live from vision instead of memory, you step into a life by design, a life where the future is not just something you wait for, but something you create. Change is not complicated. It follows a precise formula. If you want to transform your habits, your identity, and ultimately your life, you don't need willpower alone. You need alignment. The quantum habit formula is simple but profound. Thought slay emotion ups action. Repeated consistently equals transformation. When you understand and apply this formula, you stop forcing change and start embodying it. Let's break it down. A thought is the beginning of every new possibility. When you think, I am disciplined, or I am abundant, you are lighting up new neural pathways in your brain. That thought is like a signal sent out into the quantum field of possibility. But on its own, a thought is fragile. Without reinforcement, it fades. This is why so many people set goals, make resolutions, or dream of change, but nothing shifts. They only think about it. The second element is emotion. Emotion is what gives thought its power. When you add gratitude, joy, inspiration, or determination to a thought, you amplify it. Emotion is energy in motion. It creates a chemical response in your body that convinces your nervous system the thought is real. Imagine saying, I am confident, while actually feeling confident. That alignment between thought and feeling wires the new identity into your brain much faster than thought alone ever could. The third element is action. Action signals to your body and environment that you are serious about your new identity. You can think and feel abundant all day long, but if you still act from scarcity, avoiding opportunities, shrinking back, doubting yourself, the signal is inconsistent. But when you align your actions with your elevated thoughts and emotions, you create coherence between mind, body, and environment. That coherence is what accelerates transformation. Now here's the key: consistency. One day of applying this formula won't change your life, but 21 days of repetition will begin to rewire your subconscious. Repetition is what takes a conscious choice and installs it as an unconscious program. Think of it like learning to play a musical instrument. At first, every movement feels forced, but after enough practice, it becomes automatic. You don't even have to think about it. Habits work the same way. The quantum habit formula is not about making massive leaps overnight. It's about small, intentional alignments practiced consistently until they become second nature. Each day, you think the thought, you feel the emotion, and you take the action. Bit by bit, the old self dissolves and the new self emerges. And then something extraordinary happens. Transformation doesn't feel forced anymore. You don't have to remind yourself to think differently. You automatically do. You don't have to fake the emotion. You genuinely feel it. You don't have to push yourself to act. You naturally act in alignment with your vision. At this stage, the formula has done its work. It has installed a new operating system in your brain and body. You've become someone new. But here's the most powerful part: this formula is quantum because change doesn't always happen gradually. You might repeat the process for days with little visible result, but then suddenly a breakthrough occurs. You feel lighter, more empowered, more connected. You start seeing synchronicities, opportunities, and evidence that your inner transformation is shaping your outer world. The shift seems instant, but in reality, it was built on the invisible consistency of applying the formula daily. So remember this: every time you choose a thought aligned with your future, every time you add emotion to that thought, every time you take an action in alignment with both, you are wiring your brain and body for transformation. Do it once, and it's a spark. Do it daily for 21 days, and it's a new identity. That is the quantum habit formula, the science of rewiring your brain, the art of embodying your future, and the pathway to becoming the person you were always meant to be. Most people believe that change is slow, hard, and takes years of effort. They imagine transformation as climbing a mountain, step after painful step, progress inch by inch. But the truth is very different. Real change doesn't happen gradually, it happens suddenly. It may take days or weeks of consistent practice to prepare the ground, but the breakthrough itself arrives in a single moment. Think of water heating on a stove. At 99 degrees, it is still liquid. At 100 degrees, it transforms into vapor. That shift is instantaneous, but it was built on all the invisible heat applied beforehand. Transformation in your life works the same way. For days, you may feel as if nothing is happening. You repeat the thoughts, you practice the emotions, you take the small actions, and yet your reality looks the same. But then, one day, something clicks. The old identity dissolves and the new self emerges. Change arrives like a quantum leap, sudden, powerful, undeniable. This is why consistency is so important. You cannot predict which repetition will be the one that shifts everything. It might be the 11th day of practice, or the 19th, or the 21st. But if you stop too soon, you never reach the boiling point. You never experience the sudden transformation that was waiting just beyond the threshold of persistence. Neurologically, this happens because your brain resists change at first. The old neural circuits, the ones tied to your past habits, emotions, and identity, are still strong. But every time you choose a new thought, a new feeling, or a new action, you weaken those old circuits and strengthen the new ones. At first, it feels like a battle. But over time, the scales tip. And then, in a single moment, the new circuits take over. That is the moment you feel different, act different, and see the world differently. Emotionally, this moment feels like a release. You might notice yourself smiling for no reason, feeling light in situations that once triggered you, or acting boldly where you used to hesitate. That's because the old emotional programs of the past no longer control you. You're not forcing change anymore, you're living it. The person you used to be feels distant, almost like a stranger, and the new self feels natural, effortless, authentic. This is why transformation often surprises people around you. They see you living in new ways and ask, "What happened to you?" From the outside, it looks like the change came out of nowhere. But you know the truth, it was the result of consistent inner work that built up until one day it became visible to the world. Here's the empowering part. Once you experience sudden change in one area of your life, you realize it is possible in every area. You stop believing the story that transformation takes years, and you start trusting the process. You understand that each repetition, every conscious thought, every elevated emotion, every aligned action, is heat being applied to the water of your life. And sooner or later it will boil. So don't be discouraged by the days when change feels invisible. Trust the unseen work happening in your brain and body. Trust the rewiring process. Because when the breakthrough comes, it will not come slowly. It will arrive in a flash, and it will feel as though the future you've been rehearsing is suddenly alive within you. Change doesn't crawl. It leaps. It doesn't drip, it bursts. And the moment it happens, you'll realize the new self was never far away. It was building inside you all along, waiting for the moment to emerge.